What do we want to make tonight?
I have a leftover creature from the other day, but are we doing creatures or items or?
I'm open to anything. Todd had two good ideas. I think the idea of the fact that these things, when they, like, if they molt, he was saying that, like, those things retain a certain magic. The crystals on their back retain a certain magic that is very potent and powerful. If you wanted to attack one of them, that would be a great weapon. If you could get your hands on enough of these crystals and forge some kind of weapon with it, it would be, a good way to take them out quick.
I dig that. That's interesting.
Yeah, I'd love to expand upon this idea we've got going. Doesn't have to do anything to do with the Manatus. As you can see in this episode here, or this episode, there's several episodes that we stretched that out over. But I love this idea of this subterranean area closer to the core of the planet. And like we had this idea of like lava being at the core, but like what if it was actually magic itself that had formed the planet, and that's where it just kind of holds the planet together. It's all at the core. Like we could expand off of this whole Manatus subterranean culture and area and what it's like, or we could just work on a new creature. I know Todd had mentioned a swarm, and I think you had a swarm idea too, didn't you, Artie?
I had this blood grub idea I was toying with. Another insect.
How big would these things be?
A couple feet. They'll be this big, gross. They like latch onto you like a leech.
Oh, that's cool, because I had a similar idea of almost like a dune worm, but smaller, like a cave dwelling, mineral eating creature.
Oh, okay. That goes in line with the Manatus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be a similar in that terrain.
Yeah, the whole idea of multiple smaller ones hang out in like pods or groups. And then as they get larger, they become more solitary.
Yeah, maybe create their own pods with other, and it grows and they spread, and it's almost like a disease in the subterranean. So over the course of the night, what we're going to do as we come up with this creature, by the way, this episode is known as Making Monsters or Friends with Monsters. We're joined by Todd tonight. It is a pleasure to have you. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, absolutely. I appreciate it. Nice. Always loving to get into the creative side of D&D.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And speaking of creativity, we got the artist himself, Mr. Arthur T. Nyman, a fine artist. I will link his Etsy channel down in the comments.
Oh, thank you. Greetings.
We will need to collect the name, the size, the hit points, the speed, the strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, charisma, skills, senses, language, challenge rating, the traits, the actions, if it has legendary actions, its habitat, and a description for this creature as we progress. So I think we've determined that we want it to be some kind of a worm or a grub, that they're multiple as they're smaller, but as they grow, they kind of move off. It's almost like having like a wormlings and then having an adult dragon or so on and so forth.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe the crit rating goes up as they become more adult.
Let's start with the little ones. And has living this far underground done something spectacular to these creatures as it did with the Manatus, where it kind of formed, these crystals on its back? And they're not necessarily the same thing, but could it be a situation like that? Maybe one of its senses is heightened because of something, or it's attuned to, I don't know, something living, magical, something stuff. Just it attaches itself to stuff and then eats it.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that the eyesight would be minimal if they're underground dwellers. So maybe heightened smell, heightened taste, heightened hearing.
Yeah, it could pick up like vibrations, like
tremor sense.
Mm-hmm.
So these things feed on minerals, like crystal.
Yeah, definitely, or metals, maybe even.
What is it?
Or metals, even.
What is it?
Yeah, like minerals, metals, whatever they can process as they go through the ground.
Yeah, maybe there's like a vein of metal that comes through this deep under the crust of the surface that these creatures, they feed off of it, but we cherish it. Maybe it's like a platinum, or it's a Maybe it's like almost, I hate to say it, but like an adamantium or a vibranium type deal.
Or calcium or whatever it is.
Yeah. Because it would make adventurers want to come here to collect it because it's so valuable. However, the risks of coming to the subterranean is incredibly dangerous. So, yeah, I like that. Minerals, kind of stones, rocks, crystals, anything almost natural and lifeless it would feed off of, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because it doesn't need its sight. It can smell I don't know if crystals smell, to be completely honest, but if you ask the right people, I'm sure they'd tell you they do. Or it could be, like you said, this tremor sense or some other sense, kind of like the manatee has the sense of innately being able to detect magic when it's within a certain range of it. Maybe these creatures can detect this metal through this whatever sense it is. We don't need to name it necessarily.
So the young ones, the newborns or adolescents, what size are we thinking? Like 2 feet?
Yeah, I think 1 to 2 feet. And are we looking at maybe a segmented kind of worm, or?
That's what I was thinking, like a plating kind of like shell.
Yeah, because deep underground, you'd think that the conditions would be that it's very heavy, very hot, so they would have to have some type of plating or.
Yeah, to protect it. Maybe these creatures are even completely immune to fire damage due to the fact that they can just kind of dip themselves right into lava pools whenever they need to and pop out.
Yeah, I'd be able to swim right through it.
Yeah, that would be a great scenario with a party. I always like to use your party as an example, just because when I think about when I'm not creating, but when I'm choosing monsters to put against you guys, I think, wouldn't it be so much better if I had the creatures that the party had their input in? And sometimes the challenges are just so basic with what they give you with D&D. It's kind of neat to expand off of it. So yeah, as we're thinking about that tonight, just think about your characters being in a situation fighting these. What would be a challenge to them? But it would be neat to see that a party going through a lava sub cavern, and these things just starting to pop out of the lava all around them and swarming them.
Yeah, would they have a faster, or would their movement rate be unaffected by stuff like that? Could they pass right through Earth?
Maybe that's their favored terrain. So maybe their speed is enhanced as they travel through rock or molten rock. If they remove themselves from the rock, if they're in the cave, maybe they slow down.
So maybe their normal speed is just like ours, like a human size, it's 30. But when they're burrowing, maybe it's even like a 60. Maybe they can just tear through it.
Speed and a half, or 60.
That would be surprising. You wouldn't expect.
Yeah, they could just pop up and wherever they wanted to, especially if there's 12 of them coming after the party, one of them pops out of the ceiling, another one pops out of the ground, another one pops out of a stalagmite. It's like they're just coming from wherever. You can't expect it. It's almost like they're being teleported in out of nowhere. They're just popping in. And for the size of the small ones, I guess they'd be considered small. But I'll do small/large, I guess. Because we figured the larger ones are going to, the biggest ones, are they going to be colossal? Are we talking gargantuan size, or?
Maybe a large or a giant creature, depending. I'm not sure if it's based on height or length, but you would think that they would grow in length more so in diameter.
Yeah. Thicken up in a way. And
mm-hmm.
So really, they run the gambit. If you're facing up against one of these swarmers, one of the younger ones, they're probably going to be a small size. There's probably also a tier of them that would fall into the large as they're starting to, move away.
Mature.
Mature. Yep. Those might be, 7 to 8 feet tall or something like that. And then as they leave their pod and move on to another cavern somewhere to create their own pod, at that point, they're giant sized, if not larger.
Yeah, that sounds great.
So we'll have to come up with 3 sets of hit points too. The smaller ones, I guess they should be reasonable, but I think they should also still be able to stand. I'm taking this from a DM's perspective where
mm-hmm.
I don't want Wolf, for example, to be able to hit them with one hit and we don't know what their immunities and stuff are going to be yet, but like, and just take it out. Like, I think it should have enough either higher AC or higher hit points. I don't know which way we should go with it, but I feel like they should stick around for a few rounds. Not long, because this is the swarmers. They're the ones
Right.
that are just here to cause a problem almost.
Well, let's see. Most of our characters are hitting somewhere between, 20, 30 on a normal hit.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yep.
So maybe like 3 times that. Like 60 to 80 would be for a young.
Yeah. And as they mature and get a little bit older, maybe they're like 120 to maybe like 160, 150.
Yeah.
And then the big ones, I feel like they're like 350.
Yeah, 300, 350. Easily.
That's easy.
ACs, that's a tricky question, though.
It is. Yeah. Like, because I think they got to be able to withstand like going through these burrowed tunnels. Like, they're probably scraping against everything. Maybe they're a type of creature where if you don't hit them without magical weapons, it only does like half damage.
Yeah, that makes sense. I wonder, has there ever been a creature where parts of it are higher armored than others? So like the head area, where they're focusing the burrowing on, is going to be very armored, very protected. And as you get further back, maybe they get softer, a variable AC. Like, where's the shot coming?
You just say, oh boy, now we're in trouble. Now I feel like we need to come up with a whole new rule called variable AC. But that does make sense. Like it's hard, like, obviously to simplify things when you're fighting something like this and you hit. As the DM, I feel like you should be describing, oh, you're hitting its weak points. You notice the further back you go. And that should, I think, later on give advantage or whatever as the fight kind of closes out. You realize their weaknesses. And especially being at 12th level or 13th level, whatever you guys are now, yeah, you should be able to be doing that type of damage and taking them out. Okay, so half damage for normal weapons. So these things must burrow down, and I'm thinking of their little pods that they live in, these little larger families almost in a way. I almost see them as being very smooth, rounded caverns. Like, they're supposed to be like the one place where they can settle in at night and find a little bit of comfort, where all day, they're munching on rocks and minerals and stuff like that. They find this one cavern of smooth stone. Maybe they find a place where water flows through, and that's where you normally would find these, or I don't know. I'm just throwing out ideas.
Or going back to that heat, it's so prevalent down there that maybe they want to find a place to heat up their bodies so that aids their digestion, kind of thing. So they want to seek out those magma pools or hydrothermal vents, whatever.
Places where it's run through before, and yeah, that's probably where they would live. So their habitat would be kind of places.
Where they kind of sculpt the. I don't know if you guys just said this or not, but they like sculpt the rock as they
make a burrow,
weave through it and stuff. Make like networks of like tunnels and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
For their nests, at least.
Yeah, that's true, because they could find just like a vein of lava flowing through and be like, okay, this is where we're going to make our home. And maybe they have, all right, so do they have some kind of fire, lava, acid type attack, you think? They must have something that breaks all this stone and stuff down.
Yeah, so maybe by living near or in lava, they can like absorb some of it and then secrete it as they move through stuff.
Yeah.
Or like you said, an acid, that would also be a good way to get burrowing through something. I mean, as a DM, are you looking for a monster that can also produce projectile? Or is it just the bite of it that is what's, doing the damage?
You know what I think? I think that would be a feature of the adult version after they've moved beyond the juvenile stage. So I would say juveniles are probably all bite. No kind of special attack, I wouldn't think.
Maybe a ram. They can close their beak and ram into something.
Yeah,
blunt damage.
Yep. Maybe knock something down and then start eating it. Maybe it even pushes.
Yeah. Grappling, I would think too, if they're long enough. Maybe not at the young stage or the juvenile stage.
Yeah, but as they get bigger, for sure, that would make sense.
Mm-hmm.
I would think that would be some kind of a spray attack, like a breath weapon almost. It must reserve. It probably has pockets where it reserves all the stuff, the lava or whatever, breaks down, keeps it in this thing, and then when it needs it, it's like it's a last resort maybe attack.
Almost like emptying out its stomach.
Yeah,
It regurgitates.
Yeah, like stores a set amount, so it might have a lava attack, but not a lot. Can't just keep reusing it.
Or it takes a while to recharge, kind of thing.
Yeah. That is one rule over the last 2 editions that I really like, is that recharge, where sometimes you have to roll a d6, and if it doesn't roll a 6 or a 5 and a 6, depending on the creature, like, he can't use it that round. So that's pretty neat. I dig that.
Or if say they're in the lava element, they'll keep dipping under the lava and scoop up a bunch and then like spit it, you know.
Yeah, there's no reason why they couldn't do that either. Like, just because that's unlimited. If they can pop down, take a swig of it, come back up, spit it. Yeah.
Or like a tail bash where they're splashing it on you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess there's all kinds of different splash attacks that could be cultivated.
Yeah, because I assume you're going to run into these near lava. You're not going to normally find them tunneling through because they're creating kind of new tunnels. And okay, so I just wrote down lava, spit, splash. That could kind of fall under. I think that would probably be all 3 tiers: the younger, the adult, and the giant-sized one. I think the giant-sized one needs an attack and maybe a legendary action as well.
Yeah, I'm thinking, as part of its way of locating where it is and looking for pockets of minerals or whatever, that it's got some type of screech, some kind of ultrasound or, something that is verbal, that it would be using as intimidation, a fear aspect, or even, some type of sound damage, like a thunder attack.
Maybe a stun or something?
Yeah, could be. That'd be kind of neat if you could, depending on your save, if you roll in a certain range, it's this effect. If you roll in this range, it's this effect.
Yeah.
So like if you roll crappy, you're going to get stunned. You can't move. If you get, halfway on your save, then you're looking at disoriented or nauseated, where you have a disadvantage. And then, if you make your save, then you're good.
Yeah.
So it's pending on range would change the effect.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's neat. That I love things like that. That, and the other thing you said, the variable armor, like, that's a tough one because it does get into, like, as a DM, I'm like, okay, so I throw a creature at them that has a different armor class per zone. Where are people attacking? It does add to the thrill of tactical combat, I think, though.
Right.
That, I feel like almost like a Tarrasque should have, regional different armors and finding its weaknesses, because a thing like that, it's got to have a weakness somewhere. Yeah, I love little rules like that. So that's neat. Depending on the depth that it hits you at is how you're affected. Almost like a prismatic breath weapon. Right, yeah.
You could get hit more by like a cone of it. You get hit more if you're close up to it versus you're spread out. It's very diffuse. So what do we want to say about in terms of the actual attack? Is it sonic based? Is it, some other type of sense?
Yeah, I do like that. There isn't a sonic damage though. What are the damage types?
Psionic damage?
Ooh, yeah.
That's an option if we want to go down.
Psychic, really?
Yeah.
If we get into psychic though, I feel like we've changed the creature, and which I'm perfectly okay doing. But how do we explain that? What is the psychic abilities and why has it formed or evolved it to have these? Thunder damage we could write off as, you're using seismic tremors and stuff to kind of move Earth, and it would come in handy. Yeah. But I'm not objecting to doing psychic damage if there's a good, like, if it's got like some kind of a hive mind or something like that, like lithids or mind flayers,
or could you do a combination? Would that work? Because like radiant could be the heat that you feel, and like force could be, the pressure wave that's coming out at you from that attack.
we could work not all of them, but certain ones into that kind of breath weapon. We just got to figure out, which layers get assigned which effects. And like maybe the first layer should be like a push, so that if you're hit with the damage of the first layer, you get pushed into the second layer.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I might be going a little too deep at that point, but
well, hey, it's all about imagination now.
Yeah.
You dream it up and then see what works.
yeah, let loose.
Yeah, I like the idea of, like you said, you're hit with it, you're going to be pushed back for sure, whether it's damaging you or not. Maybe you just automatically you slide back 5 to 10 feet, depending on how close you are to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, then you roll for a damage type, whether it's force or radiant or what have you, or psychic.
Artie, did you have any thoughts on them being some kind of psychic or having psychic abilities? I know you mentioned the psychic damage.
As I'm thinking about it, I mean, it could work. Seeing as they're blind, they've like developed a kind of sonar that could.
Yeah.
How do they communicate with each other if they're in pods? What is that communication like? Is it a sound type communication, or is it telepathic?
That does lend to the psychic abilities too, because if they're munching, they probably are like communicating. Like, I just found a vein of this. Let's travel a little southeast. So they don't have to stop and make noises. They probably would have developed some kind of telepathic ability.
Or, like bees, how they can communicate where something is by the way that they move around and vibrate. Maybe these things vibrate, and the others can feel those vibrations.
They're in trouble, or one dies, they might send others to go and retrieve the body and stuff, like ants do.
Yeah, they don't waste. They'll consume them. Or
let's go back to basics, and we still need to figure out it's basic statistics, strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, charisma. Right at the top, anybody got any opinions on the strength of this creature?
Able to swim through lava and earth. Probably, I'd say, pretty strong.
I'd say so too. I feel like their strength and constitution and maybe like their wisdom are going to be their stronger statistics. The wisdom, I don't know. Psionis is what they use for their main statistic, but I'm going to just say wisdom off the top of my head. I feel like they would have a stronger wisdom than intelligence, a stronger strength, and then their constitution to be able to break down stone and crystals and stuff. They've got to have a really good constitution, I would think.
Yeah. To be able to withstand burning temperatures and magma.
Yep. And then the charisma, let's start easy. I mean, if you run into one of these creatures, it's not going to be the most charismatic thing in the world. I would think maybe like an 8, maybe less, maybe a 6.
Yeah. They're ugly boogers.
They're probably able to communicate with each other, but probably not. They don't have language, and I wouldn't say.
Yeah, they probably don't like get together and have a drink and go to the movies and hang out and shoot pool. Yeah.
They might have bizarre or curious rituals, like grabbing their dead and bringing them back to their nest and stuff. But
I'm gonna write down curious rituals just because I like that.
Yeah, they're not having like bingo night and stuff.
Well, it could be a lot of instinctual things.
Yeah, like animal intelligence, I guess.
Dexterity. I would think like if it's in lava, it's probably moving along swiftly. Outside of the lava, I don't imagine these things would be very swift. Like,
no, I don't think so at all. In fact, I think that would be one of their weaknesses, is when they are exposing themselves.
I hate that it's tied to the armor class. We may just have to up its armor class anyway. maybe a dexterity 10, 8, 10, 8, 8, 10.
10?
Let's do 10. I wouldn't think it's hindered. Like, it still is mobile and doesn't have to worry about, but it's just outside of its environment. It's probably flopping around like an idiot.
Yeah, because a lot of things like fish and creatures that are in the ground, like if you ever try to pull a worm out of the ground, they anchor themselves in and you cannot get them out. Whereas if they're on the ground, you can just pick them right up. Yep. So there's definitely got to be some disadvantage to being without their home around them.
Yeah, that changes kind of a combat situation entirely. If you came into their caverns where they live, they're going to know it really well. But outside of it, like, you know, they're going to be weaker. They're not going to be able to draw off of the ability to just spit and spray lava if it's not with them. So chances are they probably stay pretty close to a lava source at most times when they can, unless they're exploring or moving out or whatever.
Expanding their clutch.
Well, let's start with the big one, the Constitution. I think this would probably be its strongest.
Yeah, like 15, 17, something like that.
Yeah, I almost want to give it like I think about you guys. Like, I think about like what you guys have for your stats. I feel like some of you guys have 20s, 21s, maybe. Actually, well, let's look at, before we plug that in, let's do 3 different challenge ratings for the babies, the adults, and for the giants. The little ones, I feel like they're around a 5 or a 6. We haven't really determined the damage they're going to do, but I would imagine it's probably multi D6 or multi D8 for their bite.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, especially if they've got that lava aspect to it or you know, whatever acid aspect. Yep. Yeah, I was just looking up Brisby. He's got a 20 for Constitution.
Yeah, I kind of want to give this thing like a 20.
Okay, makes sense.
And then maybe it's
beefs up their hit points for sure.
Yeah, definitely. At all stages of the game. Although right now, the way we've got it set, we're just kind of picking their hit points anyway. But that could affect it in the long run. Maybe they have some kind of regenerative ability having such a high constitution. That's something we could think about too.
Yeah, like if they get back to lava, they can sort of cauterize wounds.
Yeah, that's a cool idea. Yeah. Maybe like I don't know, I'll just say a D6 per round that they're in it.
Plus that'll offer the protections. Like you can't really attack them while they're submerged and stuff.
Yeah, because unless you had a magical weapon, it's just going to melt in the lava if you're just sticking a long sword in.
I wonder, has that ever been posed? Like, can you shoot a lightning bolt into a river of lava to try and hit a creature that's submerged itself?
I am sure in the history of Dungeons and Dragons, someone's out there somewhere it's come up. But
there's been great debates.
Oh, yeah. The night ended. There was no more game that night. It was just a mass debate between 6 people, 5 people. Being like, of course it would hit them.
Lava is still rock, so it's going to neutralize it. It's going to ground it.
Interesting. Just disperse.
I've played with a few people that won't let things rest like that, where you're just like, let's just move on. Let's have fun. Doesn't matter. Ignore the rule. I just made the rule. Let's go. Yeah.
It is easy to get hung up on that kind of.
Yeah. It's not the worst thing in the world either. It's kind of like, I don't know, it helps you kind of like move forward as a player and a GM or DM, like getting to know how your players handle it and how they want to, move forward with it. Because then if it comes up in the future, you've got it locked and loaded. You don't have to worry about it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've always considered, especially like in-person Dungeons and Dragons, the first hour is everybody getting their snacks settled and their dice in the right place. And where's my character sheet? Didn't I leave it here last time? I don't know.
Yeah.
Where's my mini? I can't find my mini.
Need my dice. Yeah. Left my dice here, but they're gone.
Strength 16?
Yeah, that seems reasonable.
Yeah. Intelligence.
Yeah, I'm thinking maybe just a flat 10 or maybe even an 8.
I'm going to say 8. they're not stupid, but they kind of consume sleep type creatures, you know.
Could be a hierarchy. You have like the drones, and then you have the higher level ones if you want something more insectile like that.
Yeah, 10 makes sense. So the only stat left is wisdom, which I think it would have a decent score, maybe a 14.
Yeah, 14, very reasonable.
So really the challenge rating comes down to a mathematical equation of figuring out, but I would have to say maybe like the way they stand now, it would probably be like a 5, maybe a 10, and then the big one might be a 14. So maybe like a 5, a 10, and a 14 as they age and get older. Did you realize that a young red dragon, or is it an adult red dragon, is a critical rating of 15?
Yeah, I think it was 15.
I feel like that should be like a 20 or should be way up there. Like it's a dragon, you know, this is what the goddamn game is named after. It's Dungeons and Dragons. Like every dragon should be epic in scale.
I agree with you. And it seems like most of the campaigns that I've been in where we've had to deal with the dragon, it's always been something that is a very long battle, you know, sometimes over several sessions. You know, the abilities that they have improved over the years. But, you know, going back to the initial, you know, Dungeons and Dragons, I think they were more downscaled to what the characters that you could play could deal with.
Yeah, that makes sense, because you can't really create a creature that a party of, you know, 4 players aren't going to be able to take out, because I think as a company, you have to kind of make a wide array of creatures. However, there are going to be those Tarrasques, those black, you know, the adult dragons and stuff, that they should be an epic battle.
It's kind of like the culmination, you know, it's like, you know, you have lived with your character for so many episodes, so many campaigns, that you know exactly what you can do. And so when you hit that pinnacle creature, you are in for it, but you're also capable.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I mean, not that I'm above doing it. Like, I would definitely kill off a character if they did something dumb enough to warrant it. But it's the development of the characters that I love seeing. And I know I mention this a lot in a lot of these episodes where I talk about, like, I hate killing them because I always ask for a backstory. I want to know the characters. I want to see where they're going. I want to see how I can mess with them. Like, that's just the fun of being a dungeon master. If you're not, you know, that's a huge part of it for me. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've always had a backstory for my characters, but then you get into the game and then it never comes into play. And it's like, why did I mean, I kind of want to know my internal motivations for how this character should act.
Yeah.
You know, and why they might do this or that. But, you know, some of the nice things is to pull from that story and say, hey, you know, you mentioned this guy in your backstory. He's in the campaign now, and you interact with him. That's awesome.
Yep. All right. What else do we got here? We got to name this creature eventually.
Yeah.
I think its languages are basically going to be telepathic and vibration. Legendary action. I would like to come up with like a legendary action for the giant one, the matured one, the one that's created its own pod of these other smaller ones. Like, it's got obviously the spray, almost like a prismatic breath weapon attack at, you know, its adult level. So what epic feature would challenge you, Brisby, or you, Cal, at, you know, your current level? Like, what would knock you out of your socks?
The way it manipulates lava or manages it is pretty horrifying.
Lava manipulation.
Like it spits it, stuff.
What if at its grander level, though, what if it's because
it can use the environment?
Yeah, or even like it, almost like a Magneto type thing where he uses metal. He can just grab metal from anywhere and throw it at you. What if they have that ability, psychic ability to not telepathically, telekinetically
pick up and throw?
Yeah.
Oh, that would be awesome. That would be terrifying, but awesome.
send like tidal waves of.
Oh,
molten.
yeah. Lava wave. That's great.
But that comes back to his tail. Like if he could swish his body or his tail and create a big wave that way, and the bigger they are, the more awful.
Or do they maybe have the ability to, as they got older, to change the solid rock into magma? So they're starting to change your terrain.
Like rock to lava, basically.
Yeah, basically.
I love that idea because then all of a sudden you're on flat ground and it's just like it uses its attack to just drop you into, maybe it can move 30 feet of earth or something like that. And all of a sudden the lava flows in and you're suddenly at the bottom of this pit. Like, that's epic. That's cool. I dig that. Yeah.
That'd be pretty terrifying.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And then all of a sudden, it turns to your friends and hits you with this telepathic, like, rain or telekinetic rain of lava, and just suddenly this 30-foot area, it's just raining down lava on everybody. And yeah, this is
Don't
cool
forget
picture.
your fire resistant gear.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
What would you name something like this? This worm, stone-eating worm creature. Now, you could go with just a typical adjective, lava something, like lava worm, or I'm sure there might be one of those out there, to be honest. But
Or like a terra or minerals, something to do with minerals.
yeah.
I kind of like Terraworm because it not only gives you the sense of these can be a terror, but also, the idea of
Terraforming.
terra forma,
I think that's perfect. Terraforming the planet around it and terrifying those who oppose it. What about like for its bite, 3d6 plus 6 at pretty much any stage? Maybe it goes up to like, a 4d6 and then like a 6d6 or something.
Yeah. Do we want to have like an elemental aspect to the bite, or?
I had an idea, but this might get a little too convoluted. One of you guys mentioned how it breaks down minerals and stuff. It could have like an acid. Like I know we talked about spraying lava, but it could also have like a regurgitation.
Yeah,
like
very
acid
strong
spray.
acid stomach.
Yeah, that would be highly corrosive to like everything.
What type of damage does something like that do? I imagine you have to make a save. What kind of a save would it be?
It definitely would be maybe Constitution or Dex to get out of the way of it.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Dex, probably.
And then it would probably be acid, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe there's a little bit of acid in their mouth. I mean, maybe that's what they're using to
break
secrete
down
and break down the stuff as they're biting into it.
Yeah.
So you could have an element where when it bites, it does extra corrosion damage, like it's saliva. This is like caustic. Instead of having a spray attack.
Yeah, if it's latched onto you, I think it should be using whatever attack it can, whether it be a regurgitation to try to sever, your arm off so it can go eat it. Maybe that's a luxury item, something that it's really like filet mignon on the menu for these creatures. Like it eats stone and rocks all day, but when it gets meat, it's like, oh, this is great.
When it has Irkin, it just says, I'm going for that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like a Constitution save after it's latched on with its bite.
So like once it bites down on you, its beak, it holds on like the turtle. It just grabs and it doesn't let go. You got to cut them off.
Yeah.
Kind of like the leech that you were talking about, Artie.
I still want to create a creature that's like, not microscopic, but that's like, really teeny, that gets under your armor and like just does massive damage and has a crazy hit points and an armor class. And like, it's just underneath and you can't do anything about it. And it's just attacking you constantly. That's just
You got to stab yourself to kill it.
Yeah, it's like, what do you do? Like, nobody can cast a spell at it. Like, it's just constantly, like, infecting you with some kind of disease every bite. Like, that would be a cool monster. That's the monster I want to do next.
I must say, I've always loved creatures like that, and they do have some. I can't think of their names right now. They hang on the top of a cave, and they wait till you walk under them. They drop down, and they burrow in towards your heart.
What if, okay, all right, hang on, I got an idea.
Not
What
to
if-
say you can't develop your own worm.
What if when these things are at the pupal stage, they're just teeny tiny, what if they could like use their psychic ability? What if they could latch on to other things and kind of control them?
Ooh, like
Is
a
that-
mind worm.
Yeah.
That's freaky.
That's sort of like the idea I was developing.
It could, I guess it could be like a scout, like the eyes and ears of the rest of the colony. Be like, okay, I'm, watching out in the northeastern quadrant, all's clear or whatever, telepathically sending its messages back and forth. But let's take a look at Artie's art here. What do we got going on?
Yeah, I'm back.
Yeah, welcome back, Artie. We lost you.
Yeah.
Thank you. My phone overheated, I think.
I think you got taken out by a Terraworm. I think you might be possessed by one right now. I'm not 100% sure.
I think so. It's psionic abilities.
As always, you manage to bring these creatures that we come up with in our minds to life.
Well, thank you, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
I think after every game, I'm always just like, oh, what's Artie going to come up with this time?
So much great inspiration from you guys. I appreciate you.
Yeah, I appreciate you. I couldn't imagine a life without D&D and having you guys to be able to play with. It's like it brings almost like a fictional biography into your life, where like you have these friends. Like I'm friends with Todd, I'm friends with Artie, but I'm also friends with Cal and Brisby, and like they have a whole story to tell, and like it's fun to sit down with your nerd friends and like be like, oh my god, you can't believe what happened in D&D this week, and I couldn't imagine my life without having had that in it.
Yeah, I agree. It's a very detailed story that gets told, and it's your opportunity to be somebody else and to behave maybe totally different from how you would normally behave.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a huge draw. And I'm very thankful for Artie and his art. It takes me back to the very beginning of D&D when I was looking at those old monster manuals and Fiend and Folio and the Dungeon Master's Guide, and just falling in love with those fantasy images of all these creatures.
Yeah, without the art, I don't think I would have been as drawn in. Well, the Terraworm is a new creature that we've now added to the subterranean level of Thalia. It dwells in the same probably area with the Manatus. Do they live in peace? Do they live at war? Who knows? That's something we'll have to determine on a later episode of
Mortal enemies.
Yeah, they could
They
be.
do seem like they would be at odds.
Mm-hmm.
I would say.
Maybe they try to thin out the pods so that they don't become the adult.
Yeah, the adults are probably really dangerous.
Yeah, maybe maybe they really love, like I was saying earlier, maybe the filet mignon or whatever their caviar is could be the Manatus.
Because those crystals are in their carapace.
Yeah. And just to mention really quick one more time before we wrap for the night, the Manatus, I love Todd's idea. And if you guys have any other ideas, put them in the comments below, of these things molting and the crystals being able to use to forge weapons to fight these creatures. I don't want to forget that. And it's just a little tagline, a little addition on to that Manatus episode. That's Todd's contribution to the Manatus.
Way to go.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed that one. It was fun.
Yeah, it is. When like you can get together and there's no like pressure, it's just a matter of like creating a fun thing. I love it, and I could do it all the time. And I'd love to expand this, and we've done some monsters now. I'd like to do some magical weapons. I would love to do maybe like a village or like a town or something like that, where we talk about different, businesses that we add to it. That'd be a kind of cool thing where we could have our own little town and incorporate it into this giant adventure that we're kind of creating.
That could be like an offshoot campaign.
There was mention of like kind of a war happening on the surface, and they needed these crystal weapons to fight these creatures on the surface and sending a party to go find them, finding out that these creatures aren't, these mindless killing machines, but rather intelligent. And yeah, I think all that's coming together, and these new Terraworms definitely play a huge part in this upcoming adventure campaign, whatever you want to call it.
Cool. I'm excited.
Thank you guys so much for joining me tonight. Anything else you guys want to add to this creature? Or I think it's pretty good. We'll probably iron it out in our talk.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
We'll polish it up.
Getting there.
Don't go to sleep with a catch it in your pocket.